Hey everybody, this is the final chapter, chapter 14 of Mario Tronti's Marx Labor Power Working Class. Here we go. It's titled The Struggle Against Work! Exclamation point. To finish, let's go back to the start, to the double, divided and self-counterposed nature of labor. But now we are speaking not of the labor contained in the commodity, but the working class contained within capital. The Zweischlechtige Natur of the working class consists in the working class's simultaneous existence as both concrete and abstract labor, labor and labor power, use value and productive labor, capital and non-capital, that is, both capital and the working class. It is here we find that the division is already a counterposition, and counterposition is always struggle, but struggle is not yet organization. It is not enough for labor and labor power to be objectively divided within the working class. In fact, this is precisely how they present themselves as united within capital. They must be divided through a subjective action. Only in this way do they become the true means for building an alternative form of power. It is true that Trennung, separation, division, is the normal relation in this society, but it is also true that precisely capital's strength is capital's ability to hold together what is divided, a strength that has underpinned its history and will be the basis of what remains of its future. Capital can live exclusively by keeping the working class within and against capital, and on this basis, it imposes the laws of its own development on society. It is thus necessary to find the point where it would be possible to impede this unity, where it becomes possible to block the mechanism of synthesis, forcibly separating the opposite poles to the point of rupture and beyond. And this point lies within the working class, just as the working class is within capital. This point is precisely the separation of the working class from the working class's self, from work, and thus from capital. It is the separation of the political force from the economic strategy, and we need to speak of more than just division and separation. What is needed is struggle, opposition, counterposition. To fight against capital, the working class must fight against itself, qua capital. This is the height of contradiction, not for the workers, but for the capitalists, and it is necessary to expand and organize this contradiction. The capitalist system will no longer function, and the plan of capital will begin to retreat, not as a development of society, but as a revolutionary process. A working class struggle against work. The workers struggle against their own condition as a wage laborer. Labor power's refusal to become labor. The working class's mass rejection of the use of the working class's labor power. Such are the terms in which the initial division counterposition that Marx's analysis first discovered within the nature of labor are here reproposed strategically after the tactic of research. The Doppelcharakter of the labor represented in commodities is thus discovered to be a dual nature of the working class. Dual and at the same time divided and at the same time counterposed to the working class's self, counterposed to the working class's self, and at the same time in struggle with the working class's self. We should understand that the bases of the vast political complexity of all the great problems of organization and of their solution in the rediscovery of an organic relation between class and party all lie in this critical relation internal to the working class itself. And this relation becomes an even deeper unresolved problem as the working class grows into a dominant force. Both the well-honed weapons of theory and the blunter material weapons of daily practice should henceforth be aimed at precisely this point. And here, too, there is not much more that needs inventing. Contemporary forms of working class struggles in the heartlands of advanced capitalism all bear, in the rich content of their own spontaneity, the slogan of the struggle against work as the only possible means of striking a blow against capital. Again, the party presents the party self as the organization of what already exists within the class, but which the class alone cannot succeed in organizing. No worker today is prepared to recognize the existence of work outside capital. Work equals exploitation. This is the logical prerequisite and historical result of capitalist civilization. From here, there is no point of return. The worker has no interest in the, quote, dignity of work, end quote. The worker can leave the, quote, pride of the producer, end quote, entirely for the boss. Indeed, only the boss now remains to eulogize work. True, in the organized workers' movement, there is still a place for such ideology, but not in the working class itself. Today, the working class need only look at the working class itself to understand capital. The working class need only combat itself in order to destroy capital. It has to recognize itself as a political power and negate itself as a productive force. For proof of this, we need only look at the moment of struggle itself. During the strike, the, quote, producer is immediately identified as the class enemy, labor standing counterposed to the working class as an enemy. Such is the point of departure not only for antagonism, but also for its organization. If the alienation of the worker has any meaning, the alienation of the worker's essence is highly revolutionary. The organization of alienation. The organization of alienation. This is the obligatory path that the party must impose on working class spontaneity. The goal is, again, refusal, but at a higher level. It becomes active and collective, a political refusal on a mass scale, organized and planned. Hence, the immediate task of working class organization is now to overcome passivity. To overcome passivity. This is possible on one condition, that this passivity is recognized as an elementary, spontaneous form of refusal by the working class. For mass passivity always follows a political defeat of the workers, to be blamed on their official organizations, or after a leap forward in capitalist development, that is, in the appropriation of socially productive forces. Everyone knows that, over the past few decades, these two objective preconditions of working class passivity have combined. Indeed, they have evermore become the absolute despotic power of capital. While capital is conquering the whole of society at the international level and becoming socialized, the idea of giving working class movements the political role of managing the national social interests risked a historic suicide. The result was an interruption of the revolutionary process that had advanced through stages from 1848 and 1871 to 1917. From 1917 onward, the annals of the revolution carried the mark of working class defeat. What intervened at this point to block the further progress of the revolution? What prevented the process from reaching the process's intended end goal? The deeper we look, the more we see that passivity has been the most powerful barrier in blocking all future revolutionary possibilities. The truth is that the working class's massive refusal to consider the working class as self an active participant in capitalist society represents a decision to opt out, a stance against the social interest. Hence, what appears as integration of the working class into the system does not in fact represent a renunciation of the struggle against capital. Rather, it indicates a refusal to develop and stabilize capital beyond certain given political limits, beyond a fixed defensive cordon, from which aggressive sallies can then be launched. If the working class had to find a single response to both capitalist production and the official workers' movement, the only possible one was a specific form of entirely working class self-organization. based on a spontaneous passivity, an organization, in other words, without organization, meaning a working class organization not subject to bourgeois institutionalization. The result was one of those organizational miracles that are possible only from the working class point of view. Like Lenin's, quote, bourgeois state without a bourgeoisie, end quote, an organization no longer seen as an intermediate form of the workers' state, but as a preliminary form of the working class party. Today, the basic planks of the party must be laid across a political void in terms of both practical experience and theoretical research. But this does not alter the fact that colossal foundations have already been laid on the decisive terrain of direct class struggle, marking out where the offensive must begin and where it must reach. Passive, non-collaboration in the development of capitalism, and active political refusal of its power are the beginning and end point of this breakthrough. The opening of the revolutionary process lies entirely beyond this point. On this side lie all the present problems of building organization for the revolution. We need the tactics of organization in order to arrive at the strategy of refusal. We need the tactics of organization in order to arrive at the strategy of refusal. And it is here, in the middle, that we need continually to point against the class enemy, the only subversive weapon capable of reducing the class enemy to a subaltern force, namely the threat of denying the class enemy the mediation of the working class in the social relation of capitalist production. The working class must no longer shoulder the requirements of capital, even in the form of its own demands. The working class must force the class of capitalists to present its own objective needs and then subjectively refuse them, compel the bosses to ask, so that the workers can answer with an active, organized no. This, today, is the only possible route to overcoming working class passivity, overturning the spontaneous form this passivity presently takes, while furthering its present political content of negation and revolt. The workers' first organized no to the capitalist first demands will then explode as a declaration of total war, a historic call to the decisive struggle, the modern form of the old revolutionary slogan, workers of the world, unite. None of this will be possible without the greatest degree of violence. This we know from experience. In all the upheavals of the past, the type of productivity was left intact. It has always exclusively been a question of the distribution of productive activity, redistributing labor to new groups of people. Only the communist revolution, as Marx said, or as we can today begin to say, simply the revolution, the only plausible present-day minimum program for the working class, challenges for the first time the whole of productive activity that has hitherto existed. This challenge will abolish work, and in so doing it will abolish class domination. The abolition of work by the working class and the violent destruction of capital are one and the same. What then of labor as the, quote, prime necessity of human existence, end quote? Marx. Perhaps it would be better to transport it from the future prospect of communism to the present history of capitalism. Let the capitalist labor rather than the workers. Does this mean that if confronted with Marx, the working class point of view would arrive at a kind of parricide? This is a question we cannot yet answer. The continuation of the research presented here will be decisive for the solution of this and all the other problems it raises. There are no pre-given solutions. Once again, everything remains to be done. To this end, we have to keep our eye on the most obscure aspect of the whole process, until, that is, we have reached the point at which we can distinguish what has happened within the working class since Marx. To this end, we have to keep our eye on the most obscure aspect of the whole process, until, that is, we have reached the point at which we can distinguish what has happened within the working class since Marx. Mario Tronti, 1965. I gotta edit the videos because I've been saying that it was 1966. Thank you so much for listening. That's the end of the entire book, Marx, Labor Power, Working Class. Let's see if I got it right on the last video. Yes, I did. All right. So that's the end of Marx, Labor Power, Working Class by Mario Tronti. Thank you so much for listening.